Part 100. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1026. Wu. A horn sound rippled in the sky. The dark army at the foot of the mountain moved quickly along the official road. The group of people on the mountain watched the army heading towards the border with indifferent expressions, feeling particularly complicated in their hearts. Finally the fight started. Zhu Zhenjun looked at the army that had already left the mountain pass and headed straight for the northern barbarians, and he sighed helplessly for a moment. If this war breaks out, the world will be in chaos. Tubo, Dali, and Zixia have all begun to prepare to send troops. If there is a big victory, the world will be peaceful. If there is a tragic victory, 100 years of melee, and if both sides suffer. At the end of the story, old Mangasu couldn't bear it anymore. In the end, he didn't say the 4 words in the history book. He just said euphemistically, "Then we can only wait for another Emperor Ran." Everyone wants to live a peaceful life, whether in the world or in the temple, but the current battle is bound to be the prelude to troubled times. If it were my brother. Zhu Zhenjun looked towards the north and thought of many things, but his thoughts were interrupted by the sharp voice of the old Mangasu beside him. "True Lord, be careful. The law of the country is like a mountain. If you go to rob a prison, you will definitely be implicated." What suppressed Su Tong was not only Xiaolishan's sword intention, but also the law of the country. Whoever dares to rob a prison will be implicated by the laws of the country. Unless this person is very lucky, otherwise the cause and effect will be entangled, and his luck will definitely be ruined from now on. Besides, Queen Qiu is asking for help. I'm afraid I won't be able to defeat Queen Qiu in this battle. Why should the true king be in a hurry? Although the old Mangasu is the last among the best in the world, his vision is very vicious. Neither Tianqian nor Buman can afford to delay this battle. As soon as the army was launched, tens of thousands of grains and fodder were consumed every day. The northern barbarians were defeated. Although everyone was united and their morale was high this time, they were actually unable to succeed. Tiangan's side is not much better. Yang Hongzhong is making trouble, and those so-called compensations have come to nothing. Tiangan has been suffering from severe droughts or disasters in recent years, and there is no food on hand at all. If there is no quick solution, the entire internal affairs of Tiangan will be brought down. When the farmers rise up, Tiangan will probably fall apart without the need for the northern barbarians to invade. Therefore, in this battle, when both sides gather their forces, they will never be as slow and leisurely as Wu Ji and Xiao Qi, like playing chess. Either push them all the way across, or get killed all the way to the end. Moreover, Xiaolishan and Su Lai both personally took command this time. When 2 dragons meet, one of them will surely die. Therefore, I am afraid that this battle will not last until autumn, and the winner may even be decided in a short period of time. By then, if the northern barbarians are victorious, then Yang Hong will be dead. If the Tianqian is victorious, it will be simple. There will be no need for Zhu Zhenjun to save Yang Hong, and Yang Hong will be safe and sound. Humph. Do you think I'm the kind of person who's afraid of getting into trouble? Of course not, but you are just a charlatan after all. Hearing this, true Lord Zhu Yang felt a wave of irritation in his heart, and waved his hand. "Let's go back to my desert. I don't care if the world is in chaos, I can just be my god with peace of mind." Zhu Zhenjun flicked his long sleeves and walked away simply. Old Mangasu curled his lips and thought to himself, "You walk in a free and easy way, but there are few people in the world who can be as free and easy as you." Thinking that the world was destined to be in chaos in the future, the wrinkles on old Mangasu's face suddenly deepened. He looked at the figure walking down the mountain, thought for a moment, and then took out a charcoal pencil and a notebook. "I swear to wipe out the barbarian slaves regardless of my own safety, and I will mourn Hu Chen with 100,000 mink brocades." Ding. Main Mission 4, Full-Scale War. Main Mission 4, All-out war. Mission requirements, the script will enter a full-scale war. Please rush to the battlefield as soon as possible to participate in this conquest and win. During the total war, the more enemies you kill, the higher the rewards you will get. When you kill different generals, you can get a lot of scenario points as rewards. Mission time, 20 days. Mission failure, you will be severely punished and 30,000 script points will be deducted. If the script points are not enough, it will be wiped out. The refresh of the main mission seems to be an invisible big hand, quickly pushing the script forward. In the last round of the war, the players died and were injured. In the end, one of them became a god vessel, but the war lasted for 3 full months before it ended. But this time, the time given by the script space was even shorter, only 20 days. Boss, how much longer do you want? Gao Zhou shouted in the team channel, but did not hear Su Tong's response. This guy is probably really fine. Seeing that Su Tong didn't respond, Chang Wuhan also began to worry about this guy. In order to hide his own tail, Chang Wuhan almost didn't dare to give Su Tong any form of help, and he couldn't even take a look at him in the cell. Everyone knows that Yeliki was slapped 3 times by Yang Hong at Chinwu Pass. The relationship between the two was such that they could not wait to tear each other into pieces. So much so that every time he heard someone talking about Yang Hong, he had to laugh. Every once in a while, he would ask people to go to the Tianlao to inquire about the news, but the answers they received were almost the same. Su Tong lay motionless on the ground as if he was a dead person. After a long time, Chang Wuhan couldn't hold back anymore. The killing intent that flashed in his eyes several times was not fake. Don't worry about him, let's go to the battlefield, just in time to let him rest, let's continue to follow the direction of the script. Gu Zibai suggested. So after everyone discussed it, they asked Gao Zhou to stay near Zhongdu City to take care of Su Tong. If Tianqian was defeated, he would rescue Su Tong from the prison as soon as possible. Gu Zibai and Chang Wuju, as well as Li Bo who was accompanying the army, rushed to the battlefield to complete the main mission. After everyone discussed it, they immediately started taking action. What they didn't know at this moment was that Su Tong, as the team leader, naturally heard what they said clearly. Josie's blessings became stranger and stranger, and it seemed as if every request she made began to become more demanding. For example, at this moment, he had to stop breathing for 3 days before he could receive a blessing. Fortunately, although the request was strange, it was not a big problem for Su Tong. Not to mention 3 days, even 30 days would have no effect on him. With Qiao Qian's repeated blessings, Su Tong's luck has far exceeded that of before, and Qianlong Chui Yuan's fate gradually began to become clear. It's just that the swordsmanship he has learned is still one step behind. He is also anxious, but at this time, he is even more impatient. Since the direction is correct, just be patient and continue to realize it slowly. In the dark cell, time seemed to have lost its meaning here. A ray of sunlight passed through the wall of the cell, and finally disappeared. Repeatedly, the situation outside became more and more anxious. Every day new battle reports are delivered from the front lines. The situation seems to be very unfavorable for the northern barbarians. Tianqin's side is unstoppable and has captured Jizhu, which is the front door of the northern barbarians. Once Jizhu is defeated, the northern barbarians will have nothing to defend. At the same time, Tubo, Dali, and Zixia had also sent troops and began to encroach on the battlefield from the side. Not long ago, Su Lai and Xiaolishan fought hard in Lin Lanshan, almost razing the surrounding mountains and forests to the ground. After the outcome was not decided, the two agreed to fight again in 7 days. At the same time, Buman and Tiangan had become a pot of porridge. Tianqin's troops were completely dispersed, and almost all the troops were charged into the northern barbarians. Upon seeing this, the northern barbarians simply dispersed the tribes. They were nomadic people, so this would give full play to their advantages. Now the territory of the northern barbarians was blooming in all directions. Even the veteran generals who had led the army for many years looked confused when they saw the battle situation in front of them. After fighting for so many years, they had never seen such a fight. Asshole, they're stalling for time. Yao Qing looked at the battle situation in front of him, and a look of anger appeared on his beautiful face. Even if he were replaced by a third-rate military general as the commander-in-chief, he would never be able to fight the battle like this. What age is it? They are still playing tricks on soldiers against soldiers and generals. Yao Qing angrily scolded Su Lai and Xiao Lishan for acting, but she couldn't do anything about it. If they were lazy, they were not idle either. They were fighting every day, and the war was getting more intense. The northern barbarian Emperor Yeliki was moved. The newly built Sun battleship was rampaging around every day, and the people chasing Tiangan were fighting. The Emperor is personally present on the battlefield, who can say that others are not fighting tooth and nail? When she thought of this, Yao Qing felt bursts of pain in her heart. She didn't know what happened recently, but from time to time, she would feel a tearing pain in her heart. Such severe pain often only lasts for a moment, but recently it has become more and more frequent. It seems that a voice appears in my mind, as if it is saying something to myself, but every time I listen carefully, I can't hear it clear. It lasted for a while, and the stinging pain in her heart gradually disappeared. When Yao Qing regained her breath, she thought for a moment, "Come here, please contact Anza from Tubo, Zixia and Dali to urge them to enter the battlefield as soon as possible. Time is not up more, we must promote the conditions for the coming of the God King before the comet hits the moon." Yao Qing's calculation was good. Tubo and other neighboring small countries were also willing to take advantage of this opportunity to strengthen themselves. But when they rushed in, they discovered that the situation was completely different from what they thought. At first they rushed in under the guise of helping the northern barbarians, but unfortunately, they encountered the Xinwu camp led by Gu Zibai. Good guy, the title of divine sword in the world is not given for nothing. Gu Zibai has been going crazy these days. The more he kills, the better his luck will be. He will also get extra script points. 15 points per head, which is not too much, not too little. But if he stops killing, his luck will plummet. So much so that at this moment, his eyes were red and he wanted to stab anyone he looked at. But many northern barbarian tribesmen ran so fast when they heard it was Gu Zibai, wishing their parents hadn't given them 2 extra legs. Just when I was worried, I saw a large gift package from the coalition composed of the 3 Tibetan kingdoms. Why are you so polite? He immediately rushed forward with 3,000 divine warriors. At the beginning, when the 3 kingdoms' allied forces took a look, who could they look down on with such a small number of people? I immediately rushed forward with a cry, and the result, I'm sorry for being born as a human being. 3,000 Xinwu troops rushed down. The moment Gu Zibai raised the flying dragon flag that Su Tong left for him, the mount's speed suddenly increased to the extreme as if it had taken stimulants. Kill! A killing sound was heard, and the terrifying murderous intent formed a sound wave visible to the naked eye. The allied forces of the 3 kingdoms, which had been howling just now, were instantly shocked. The moment they saw the cavalry rushing over, they seemed to feel thousands of emotions. The charge of thousands of troops. Before the troops arrived, their courage was already frightened. Even the generals of the 3 kingdoms' allied forces realized that something was wrong. They seemed to have been kicked on an iron plate. But when they thought about it, they were outnumbered and the opponent was only 3,000. Even if it was a head-on confrontation and they would risk their lives, he can also drag this cavalry to death. However, this idea turned into as fragile as a bubble in the next second. The moment the 2 armies collided, the superiority became clear instantly. The cavalry rushed into the coalition forces, like an indestructible sword, instantly piercing through the 60,000 men in their vanguard. On the galloping horses, the the swords in the hands of the Shinwu army burst out with dazzling lightning. With the blessing of Su Tongjiangshu, 3,000 people were like 3,000 Pikachus, erupting in dazzling arcs of electricity in the middle of the battlefield. Shoot the arrow, shoot the arrow. Seeing this scene, the commanding general's face turned green, and he hurriedly asked the rear to shoot arrows. The commander could see clearly that the cavalry was wearing leather armor and did not have strong defense at all. But when the arrows rained down like a rainstorm, the commander's eyes almost popped out of his head. Seeing the dense rain of arrows falling down, these soldiers had no idea of dodging and parrying. Strange talismans appeared on their leather armor, layer by layer. The cyan-colored shield light covered both people and horses tightly. A wave of arrows, instead of harming these terrifying divine warriors, actually caused many of their own people to be shot to death. This is a slap in the face, retreat. Now the commander was cursing. The two sides were not on the same technological level at all, so they could only run away cursing. In this battle alone, the 60,000 forwards of the Three Kingdoms allied forces were killed to pieces, and only less than 30,000 people escaped. After this battle, Gu Zibai was even called the god of killing. After the allied forces of the Three Kingdoms finally escaped from Gu Zibai's pursuit, they found out after asking about it that they were the Shinwu army. They were the army that was exceptionally evaluated as the divine sword of the world by the old man of Gasu. Didn't they kick themselves on the iron plate? This battle suffered heavy losses. The generals of the Three Kingdoms alliance gathered together, and after discussion, they felt that Tiangan was too difficult to fight. Just like this, the divine sword is always there, and it is not invincible wherever it goes. With just a bunch of them, fighting against Tiangan is like throwing an egg against a stone. After discussing for a while, he simply gritted his teeth and changed the slogan, "Resist the tyranny of the northern barbarians, and the world belongs to Dakian." Not to mention, once the slogan was changed, everyone became energetic. As a result, the army just shouted twice, and Chang Wuju came. Chang Wuhen, who was riding in the sun ship, was wearing a dragon robe and was humming a ditty. Suddenly he heard the slogan shouted from below, and immediately raised his eyebrows, "Kill me." For a moment, the clouds tore apart, and the brand new sun ship slowly revealed its fangs in mid-air. The black muzzle quickly gathered a dazzling glare, turning the entire world into black and white. The marching Three Kingdoms allied forces on the ground were shouting happily, as if they felt that they were already half Tiangan people, when they felt the sky suddenly darken, followed by a sudden huge roar above their heads, and one after another. The strong light fell through the sky and exploded among the coalition forces. Note: sorry, I got stuck today, so I have been delaying the revision until now. I will update it today, and I will add more tomorrow. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1027. Compared with the Vitality Chariot, the Sun battleship is not only larger, but also more luxurious, and most importantly, there is a huge gap in the workmanship and materials. A small frontier sect like the Yuankai Shen cult had no resources to spare. The Yuankai chariot it built took 2 generations of hard work to build. This is also the reason why the Vitality chariot occasionally has some problems that need to be repaired. But the Sun battleship was different. The northern barbarians gathered craftsmen from all over the country, and there were hundreds of master carpenters, and there were more than 10 master carpenters who had entered the Dao level. Those 1,000-year-old trees were cut down and used as materials, and the daily cost was even more staggering. Xiaolishan was almost emptying the northern barbarians' treasury. Such a massive investment can be said to be the strength of a whole country. The power of the artifact created in this way is not comparable to that of the Vitality chariot. Boom boom boom. A series of indiscriminate bombings suddenly caused the mountains to collapse, and the 3-nation coalition forces below were immediately stunned. It wasn't until they saw the huge dragon-like thing above their heads descending from the clouds that they discovered to their horror that they seemed to have accidentally hit the muzzle of the gun. In just 3 minutes, the three kingdoms' allied forces had already suffered heavy casualties, and it would not be an exaggeration to describe them as rivers of blood. Earn it? Chang Wah-hen looked at the constantly beating script points in the props book and shouted, "You can make a profit with your blood. Each person has 15 script points." He just fired a few shots, and the script points already reached over 80,000. The money came so quickly, and it just made up for the gap in their current script. At this time, the commanders of the three kingdoms' allied forces shed tears. This was completely different from what they thought. They thought that Baman and Tiangan were already fighting fiercely. At this time, they rushed in and acted as helpers. They would beat whoever was weak and run away if they took advantage. I am afraid that neither Tiangan nor the northern barbarians would dare to offend them easily. After all, the 180,000 coalition forces formed by the three countries have always been a huge force. But as soon as they came in, they encountered Xinwu camp, and the good guy was beaten to a bloody head. As soon as he turned around, he ran into the new emperor of the northern barbarians again. This guy was even more ruthless. With the help of the sun god ship, he bombarded them indiscriminately and beat them until they cried for their father and mother. They could only hide their heads and run away. At this time, half of the 180,000 coalition troops were wiped out before they could even achieve an inch of success. There were less than 100,000 people left, and there were countless wounded. The soldiers who managed to escape were crying for their fathers and mothers, and they were unable to form combat effectiveness at all. Seeing this, the commander felt that if he rushed into the battlefield rashly, he might be beaten by Baman and Tiangan, so he simply led the army to hide in the mountains and forests. They planned to take advantage of the mountains and forests to hide, and when both sides were almost fighting, they would look at the situation and wait for an opportunity. Immediately, an army of 100,000 troops marched directly into the mountains, thinking that this was a foolproof attack and no one could find them. But they hid in the mountains. Although they didn't encounter Tianqian and Baman again, unfortunately, they met another person, a demon who directly pushed them to eternal damnation. Libo. Libo was wandering around with the troops, but he felt that the battlefield was too dangerous, so he simply took his cronies and hid in the mountains. Anyway, Su Tong said that he was not required to complete the task, as long as he could ensure his own safety. I wanted to be lazy, and relied on my natural bonus and the tiger's ability to recruit a large number of younger brothers. Playing with tigers, walking wolves, and eating wild game every day, I live a small life, and all I have to do is write a story about the Daowen. As a result, they encountered this group of three kingdoms' allied forces who suddenly rushed into the mountains. When these coalition forces saw Li Bo wearing the clothes of a Tianjian warrior with only a few people around him, they immediately became red-eyed and wanted to vent their anger on him. In the first few days, Li Bo chased him like crazy, but fortunately, he had the ability of the natural system to save him from danger. But the cronies around him were not so lucky. They were caught up by the masters of Xixiahal and all died in battle. Now Li Bo, an honest man, was also annoyed. I thought to myself, I am hiding here, why are you coming to beat me? Without stopping, he summoned the tiger and all the wild beasts in the surrounding mountains and forests. Taking advantage of the darkness, they launched a sneak attack on this coalition force. For a time, wolves, tigers, leopards, wild boars, wild dogs, and bison in the mountains formed a wave of beasts. They rushed directly into the camp of the three kingdoms' allied forces as if they were crazy. In the darkness, most of the soldiers didn't even see what they were before they were torn into pieces by the beasts that jumped on them. What was even worse was that he was trampled to pulp on the spot in his sleep. Even if some experts discovered these beasts early, they could not hold back the number of them. In addition, it was dark in the mountains and forests, and their combat effectiveness was greatly reduced. They were submerged in the tide of beasts in just a moment. That night, screams and screams became the main theme of the night. Facing the beast tide, these coalition forces did not even have the ability to fight back. They fled one by one. Even if they survived, they did not know where they went. At this time, the 100,000 coalition troops, who were already suffering from pain, did not even cause a slight wave on the battlefield. They simply fell asleep in this mountain forest and disappeared without a trace. So much so that it left an unknown mystery in the history books of later generations. While there was chaos outside, it was extremely quiet in the Tian Lao, as if this was an isolated Daowen. Jingle bell. The sound of chains echoed in the cell. Several jailers guarding the cells cautiously poked their heads out from around the corner and looked at the deepest room in the cell. "Sir, didn't you say that Queen Xiu wants to kill you? I'm afraid it's not good for us to do this." Prison head Jia San swallowed and carefully looked at his immediate superior who was hiding behind him. "Asshole, this is the Queen Mother's secret order. The battle situation on the front line is unfavorable. The Queen Mother is worried that something will happen if it is too late. She wants to put Yang Hong to death first." The official in charge of the Tian Lao was happy and glared at Jia San and others, scolding them for talking too much. Then, with a gesture from his eyes, someone brought the knife and axe up. "Come on, as long as you behead Yang Hong, you will get a reward of 10 taels." He was happy to urge Jia San and others to go ahead with confidence, and patted his chest and promised that he would be responsible for anything that happened. Jia San and others had a grimace on their faces, and they had already begun to greet Li Li's whole family in their hearts. Who doesn't know that cell, whoever gets close will be doomed, let alone letting them go in to kill Yang Hong? Wouldn't this cost them their lives? Although the 10 taels of gold were very tempting, they were afraid of losing their lives to take the money. Looking at Jia San and others' expressions of standing still and speechless, Hu Li knew what they were thinking, and was secretly annoyed, feeling that these people were really stupid and couldn't do such a small thing well. But now it is the time to employ people and they need to go into work. Official Hu can only explain patiently, "Don't worry, this person was suppressed by King Xiao's sword intention and was imposed by the national law. He has already been in trouble for a long time. Everyone knows about Yang Hong, so don't worry, he can't even move a finger now." When Jia San and others heard this, their faces looked like this, but they didn't believe a word in their hearts. If this is really the case, what happened to those prison bosses who died violently and became possessed during this period? If it's really that simple, why don't you go there yourself? With only 10 taels of gold left, why don't you go to J Hospital and be happy? Of course, Jia San still didn't dare to say these words. "If you don't come, I won't bother to talk nonsense with you. I don't think you need to do this errand. I can't support idlers like you here." They were happy to see the good news but couldn't say anything, so they could only show their angry expressions. Now Jia San and others dared to be angry but dared not speak out, so they could only bravely walk to the cell with their swords and axes in hand. When they walked to the cell door, they stood on tiptoes and looked up, only to see Yang Hong lying in the cell. As usual, motionless, as if he was still the same as he was when he was left here. But even so, when they approached the cell, they still felt bottomless. There was always a strong feeling that if they took another step, it would be like falling into a bottomless abyss. Jia San swallowed, turned around, and saw Li waving his hands to signal them to take action as soon as possible. Seeing this, Jia San and others looked at each other, and with a fierce kick, they immediately kicked the cell open and screamed strangely. Several people rushed forward, with their eyes closed, and slashed in front of them with their axes and knives. Good. Yun was happy to see this, clenched his fists excitedly, and couldn't help but roar in his heart, thinking that now he would be promoted to an official rank just around the corner. However, At this moment, Jia-san and others who were wielding knives and axes in the cell suddenly stood there motionless as if they had been cast a restraining spell, with the knives and axes in their hands still looking like they were slashing downwards. "Hey, what are you doing standing there? Continue." Happy to see them all motionless, he suddenly became anxious and urged Jia-san and others to chop off Su Tong's head and give it to him as soon as possible. But no matter how he shouted, Jia-san and others remained motionless, as if they were nailed to the spot by a immobilization technique. "Hey, what a bunch of trash." Seeing this, Lele cursed loudly and walked into the cell, thinking that since there was nothing strange about Jia-san and others, he would definitely be fine. But when Lele raised his feet and walked into the cell, with every step he took, a clearly visible shadow would be left behind him. As if time and space were separated, this scene made everyone outside the cell feel like they had seen a ghost. They tried to shout, but the officials seemed unable to hear them. Every time he takes a step forward, Lele will leave a shadow behind him, and at the same time, he seems to have aged a lot. But I was unaware of all this. He just walked quickly to the cell and looked into the cell. However, he did not see the figures of Jia-san and others in the cell. Instead, he saw Su Tong lying on the ground in the empty cage, with several more white bones beside him. Seeing this scene, Lele's face turned pale suddenly, and a strange feeling swept over his heart. He screamed, and turned to run away. But when he turned around, he realized that there were figures standing one after another behind him. The shadows of these people were exactly like his own, and they were slowly dissipating. How is this going? Seeing such an incredible scene, Lele was shocked to the core, and a huge panic struck him, causing him to fall to the ground without any control of his legs. With this fall, there was a clicking sound, and a heartbreaking pain hit me. Lele's face turned pale. When he wanted to get up, he realized that he had no strength at all. Looking at his hands again, Lele was seeing that his palm had withered so much that only a thin layer of blood skin remained. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1028. Run. The guards outside the cell were all terrified when they saw this incredible scene. They witnessed the process of Mr. Le changing from a living person to a skeleton. This scene was so weird that it was beyond their understanding. But when they turned around to run for their lives, their bodies suddenly froze, and a very obscure and unspeakable feeling enveloped them. Suddenly everyone kept looking terrified, but people seemed to be frozen in time, whether it was their thinking or their consciousness. The strange dislocation of time gradually began to spread, and even gradually began to engulf the entire prison. If you observe carefully, you will find that even the birds in the sky always maintain the same posture and freeze there, and time seems to have no meaning here. But deep in this time gap, Su Tong's figure appears and disappears. The body seems to be in this time and space, but also seems to disappear from this point in time at any time. Deep in his consciousness, Su Tong's thoughts were like the scalding sun, each thought splitting apart. In addition to the main thought getting bigger and bigger, there were more and more split thoughts. 18, 36, 72, 99, and finally stopped at the number 108. The split thoughts took the form of swords, like swords of time. It seems that every sword is like an inch of time, but compared with an inch of time, they seem to be in the past of time, not Su Tong's thoughts that are really separated at this moment. Strictly speaking, these thoughts, which are like the sword of time, were not split by Su Tong, but borrowed from the future. Borrowing your thoughts from the future to bless your current self is more terrifying than the ability to steal an inch of time. This is the second sword that Su Tong suddenly realized. Combining Xiao Lishan's fate and the slate Yan Xiao I gave him, he created an unprecedented set of sword techniques. Su Tong named this sword to prepare for a rainy day. I saw that as Su Tong followed Su Tong's thoughts, these thoughts formed a huge sword formation, which actually made the picture of the future appear in front of him. Some people say that time is invisible, while others say that time is a unit of measurement created by humans. Some people say that all things have no concept of time. But whether you admit it or not, time exists, it exists before civilization, and it continues after civilization. He opened his palm and gently grasped it forward. For a moment, countless thread-like things appeared on the tips of his fingers. Through the pictures woven by these threads, Su Tong saw many pictures of the future. Seeing the result of the final battle between Su Lai and Xiaolishan, Xiaolishan cut off Su Lai's arm, but at the same time his own chest was penetrated by Su Lai. But what is surprising is that before Xiaolishan died, his soul rushed out of his body and chose to seize the body with soldiers. The target of the seizure turned out to be his dearest nephew Yeliki. This seemed to be the retreat Xiaolishan had prepared for himself early on. However, Xiaolishan's method of seizing the body was not successful, because the person in front of him was not Yeliki, but Chang Wenzhen. Sure enough, Xiaolishan's love is so deep that Yeliki probably wouldn't be able to bear it if he were alive. Su Tong continued to fiddle with the timeline, and then he saw Su Lai behind bars and surrounded by enemies on all sides. An imperial edict deprived him of all luck. Su Tong saw his cheap junior brother holding a paper fan and smiling. Standing next to him was Yao Qing, who was thrown into the pit by him before. It turns out that my junior brother finally came together with Shang Qing Dao, but I don't know whether they started cooperating early on or whether they finally chose to join forces. These future scenes appear in front of them, but this is not their final ending. For example, this. Su Tong flicked it, creating a wave of water on the timeline. Suddenly, the future in front of him was disrupted, and various strange scenes began to appear. The Tianlao outside Linen Mansion exploded, and the black evil suppressed under the Tianlao dyed the sky black. The entire Linen Mansion has become a desperate place, and countless people are twisted and torn in the black evil, turning into monsters that are half human and half ghost. It wasn't until two boys stepped down from the top of the immortal that they managed to suppress the black evil. But they suppressed the black evil with their front foot, and Su Lai and Xiaolishan came out to kill him. The two of them worked together to kill the boy with extremely cruel methods. However, after the two people rushed into the immortal summit, there was no news again. So that's it? This may be Su Lai and Xiaolishan's most ideal plan. Su Tong speculated that the two men's general plan was to use the comet to hit the moon, and when the world's luck was in chaos, they would then use the evil energy accumulated in Linen Mansion's Tianlao for many years to form an array, and sacrifice the entire Linen Mansion as the price, so as to severely damage Shangqing Road. Although the plan is good, the price may be that countless people will be needed to back it up, and Su Tong always feels that their plan will most likely not succeed. Since I can see into the future, why can't the true Lord of the Supreme Being be able to see through it? I'm afraid that the final ending for both of them will be unhappy. Su Tong originally wanted to see if there were other possibilities, but at this moment, he suddenly noticed that there was also a timeline in his body. This timeline is very strange, as if it grew out of my own body, and is different from the surrounding timelines. This should be my own timeline and has nothing to do with the script world, so, can you see my past and future? Seeing this, Su Tong touched the timeline with curiosity. Suddenly, a powerful tearing feeling came over me, and the scenes in the timeline flooded into my mind. In a daze, Su Tong vaguely saw a figure in the darkness. He wanted to see more clearly, but the space in front of him was too dark and he could not see the shadow of the person clearly. At this time, a pair of big hands lifted him up in his arms, and then Su Tong realized that this moment was actually a picture of himself as a baby. It's hard to imagine that in this decayed world, a native soul can still be born. This is an excellent sacrifice. Why not leave it to me and let me see his future? A big hand reached out, trying to grab him out of the man's arms. But at this time, the man avoided the palm. Forget it, I don't like the idea of killing everyone. We just have different concepts from the prisoner. It doesn't mean I hate him. Prisoners. Su Tong's heart trembled. This was his father's name. I saw it in the Book of Life and Death. And this man's familiar voice instantly gave him a very bad feeling in his heart. He opened his eyes wide, trying to see clearly the figure in the darkness. But at this moment, the other party seemed to be aware of his presence, and turned his head sharply with indifferent eyes. Boom! A flash of thunder and lightning illuminated the man's face, and his empty eyes seemed to be looking directly at Su Tong's eyes from across time and space. Youngest. It's really him. Su Tong's pupils trembled. He looked at the infant in the youngest's hand. Before Su Tong could say anything, he heard the maniac's laughter beside him. Ha 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 ha, what a funny kid. I cast a thought from the future to peek at you and me. Did they notice me? Su Tong looked in the direction of the voice, and as expected he saw his familiar figure. That crazy stick man twisted his body and stumbled towards the baby in the man's arms. He danced and screamed, "You will be too weak in the future. Your father hides a lot of things in your body, the important things are mine." Suddenly the crazy god stick's face began to twist, his eyes flashed with blood like red light, and his hands made a clicking sound in the air. There was no doubt that if Su Tong was in his hands at this moment, he would have already want to be crushed into a ball of rotten flesh by him. After venting wildly, the magic stick suddenly became quiet and looked at Su Tong in the youngest's arms. He stretched out a finger tremblingly, tried to poke the little guy, and curled his lips. Boring. It will have to wait for you for many years. After saying this, the magic stick seemed to be talking to the current Su Tong. Hurry up. If you are peeking into the future, then work harder. I will find you soon and get back what belongs to me. Get out of here. As he spoke, the magic stick waved his palm, and the time in front of Su Tong suddenly turned into a blurry black and white storm. Su Tong's thoughts had to fly out of this timeline and return to his body. This old madman. What kind of monster is he? Were my parents killed by them? No wonder my mother left a message in my memory, telling me to be careful about the youngest. But why did they let me live? Also, what on earth did my father hide in me? Can you make the old magic stick kill you so much? These questions were entangled in Su Tong's heart, and even though he had a delicate mind, he could not figure out the truth for a while. But one thing is certain, he just took a peek into his past, but the old magician had already noticed it at that time. If this guy really walked out of the hospital, it would be difficult for him to escape. It seems like I have quite a problem. Thinking of this, Su Tong put away all his thoughts, opened his eyes, and looked at the bones on the ground. He couldn't help but frown, wondering who these people were and why their bones appeared here. It can only be said that they are relatively unlucky, appearing next to themselves when they break through. Standing up, the dirt on his body suddenly bounced away. The moment Su Tong stepped out of the cell with one foot, the whole northern barbarian's luck was trembling. There seemed to be chains tightening in the void, which were Xiaolishan's blessings on him. Of national law. Su Tong continued to walk forward, and a huge amount of luck surged through him, which actually broke the chain, followed by a thundering dragon roar that rippled above Su Tong's head. Su Tong strode forward, and for a moment all the immortals in the world were startled by the roar of the dragon. The old man from Gasu, who was already sleeping in the carriage, suddenly jumped up and looked up to the north. He wanted to stuff a big goose egg into his mouth. The hidden dragon comes out of the abyss and follows the clouds to the sky. Is Yang Hong out of trouble? Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1029. When Su Tong walked out of the prison, dragons roared everywhere, and all the immortals in the world were alarmed. This is the characteristic of Qianlong Chui Yuan, which undoubtedly surprises people. The fate and luck of Qianlong Chui Yuan are extremely special. It does not mean that you are just unlucky. Hidden dragons are in the abyss, accumulating thick and thin. This kind of fortune can only appear when enough strength is accumulated in underestimation, and luck is greatly improved, until the strength and luck reach unprecedented extremes. And when the hidden dragon emerges from the abyss, there are two other explanations. Follow the clouds to the sky. A proud dragon has regrets. These two statements foreshadow two endings. The former can soar in the sky and climb to the top. When advancing, it can sweep across the world. When retreating, it can be hidden in the clouds. The world can move smoothly and unimpeded. The latter, on the other hand, wants to go against the will of heaven, advance without retreating, and fight against the heaven and the earth, even if it means losing his body and his path. As the saying goes, if you hear the truth in the morning and you will die in the evening, it is the latter. Now, Yang Hong's fortune is the former. Does this mean that Yang Hong's cultivation has taken a further step and he has truly entered the realm of Hedeo Immortal? Impossible. The sea of clouds was billowing above the immortal, and the huge aura was reviving. The two boys looked to the north with shocked expressions. Yang Hong became an immortal by combining the Tao? This is impossible. We have occupied the world's destiny and have blocked the secrets of heaven for a long time. Even Xiaolishan cannot surpass us. How did Yang Hong become an immortal? Didn't it change his destiny? It's not necessarily a combination. If it is a combination, there must be a celestial phenomenon. But we changed his destiny, but it turned out to be useless. Could it be that this person still has some chance? The two boys looked depressed and turned to look at the statue behind them. The battle between the two dragons has come to an end. The luck of Xiaolishan and Su Lai has been entangled. They cannot be allowed to delay. Now there are not enough people who are close to death to meet the standards for the coming. Can it be let us take a walk down the mountain? The huge aura on the statue became more and more terrifying, and a thought as big as a baby's fist was embedded in the forehead of the statue like a gem. No. After a while, the aura on the statue gradually calmed down. Send a message to Su Lai. If you want Su Fan to change his life, kill Yang Hong. Regardless of success or not, I guarantee that Su Fan will be rich and prosperous for 100 years in the future. When the two boys heard this, they couldn't help but praise this as a wonderful move. Everyone in the world thinks that Su Lai has a grudge against this son, but everyone knows that the eldest son is what Su Lai cares about the most. Su Fan committed a heinous crime by poisoning his mother-in-law. Although this matter is top secret, there is no airtight wall in the world. So many people felt that Su Lai was eager to cut this traitor into pieces, and even Su Fan himself thought so. But if you are interested, you might as well think about it for yourself and know that if Su Lai really wanted to kill Su Fan, why should Su Fan be made an envoy and let him leave Linen Mansion? It seems that they are persecuting him and using the northern barbarian sword to kill Su Fan, but in fact they are just trying to keep him away from the dangerous place of Linen Mansion. Muir, you still need to go personally to this matter. Su Fan is being hunted by Prince 11's mansion. He is now hiding near Kafeng Mountain. Go and bring Su Fan back. Okay. I'll go now. The boy on the left nodded and was about to go down the mountain. At this moment, the statue suddenly remembered something and shouted, "Wait a moment." The boy turned around. Send a message to Yao Qing and ask her to come back. Yes. After the boy nodded in agreement, he made sure that the statue would stop talking, and then turned around and left. At this moment, Zhongdu City was already in chaos. The moment Su Tong stepped out of the heavenly prison, it shocked not only the gods in the world, but also the entire northern barbarian movement. Empress Dowager Xiao, who was in charge of the harem, felt flustered for no reason. The ministers of civil and military affairs were even more so, feeling uncomfortable all over. After receiving the news of Su Tong's escape from prison, their faces turned pale and their legs were weak with fear, fearing that this evil star would take advantage of King Xiao's absence to break into the palace and start killing people. Buzz. The prison door was pushed open, and the surrounding guards could only hold the handles of their knives tightly, but no one dared to take a step forward. Even though Su Tong has condensed his aura to the extreme, he is now half human and half immortal, transcending the world, and these guards can still only feel huge pressure when facing him. It's like an ant seeing an elephant. Even if the elephant stands there motionless, its huge size will only make the ant feel despair. Su Tong looked in the direction of Prince Eleven's mansion. Golden light appeared in his eyes. Buddha Eye and Ming Ikemen were activated at the same time. His gaze penetrated the entire palace, and in a moment, he quickly locked on a housekeeper. Just a look made the butler panic, and the hairs on his body stood up. A feeling of impending doom came over him, causing the butler to jump up and jump on the roof to escape. Seeing this, Su Tong raised his hand and struck down with a sword. The sword was like a star, piercing directly through Prince Eleven's mansion and killing a housekeeper in the mansion on the spot. But it wasn't over yet. Su Tong's figure was like lightning, his steps lifted and then fell, and the time around him seemed to slow down. The next second Su Tong Gren appeared next to a businessman. The businessman's pupils widened, and his face suddenly turned pale when he saw Su Tong suddenly appearing in front of him. Then Su Tong just patted him on the shoulder, and the businessman fell to the ground without breathing. Businessmen, sedan bearers, and even some civil servants, wherever Su Tong's figure walked, someone was bound to die. But he was not killing innocent people indiscriminately, but cleaning up the hidden obstacles on the Shangqing road. But in the blink of an eye, Su Tong Gren had arrived at the gate of Buman Palace. At this moment, there was already a strict ban outside the palace gate, and the black and dense imperial army had formed a battle formation. The whole city was filled with smoke, and in the smoke clouds that covered the sky, countless wolf shadows emerged. It was the serious formation again, but this time Su Tong did not receive any notification that he was being suppressed. Looking up, I saw smoke billowing from the wolf, but there was always a blue sky above my head. The hidden dragon emerged from the abyss and soared up into the clouds. Su Tong's luck at this moment was already unlimited and would not be affected by these external forces at all. No wonder Lu Ji was so unscrupulous back then. Su Tong thought of Lu Ji in his heart. If Tu Feiwen hadn't sacrificed half his life and all his cultivation, he would have given him the prophecy. I'm afraid that Lu Ji is even more unruly and invincible in the world. Unfortunately, no one in this world can give him a prophecy. At this moment, he is the protagonist of this world, and no one can do anything to him. Stop. The 8,000 imperial guards all waved their spears in unison, but before the spear points could point at Su Tong, they were shattered by an invisible force. The eyes of the imperial guards instantly became empty, and all they could see now was the mountain-like figure in front of them. The leader of the Forbidden Army was sitting in the center of the army. Facing the surging flames on Su Tong, his face suddenly turned pale and he screamed. He fell to the ground and was unable to get up. Su Tong ignored these forbidden troops and strode straight into the palace gate. For a moment, the palace was buzzing, and a huge mountain formed and hid Su Tong's luck. But before he could get closer, he heard a dragon roar that shook the surrounding area. There are no taboos in what an immortal does. Kaka kaka. Suddenly, the sound of shattering objects echoed throughout the palace. It's over, he's coming to kill you. The civil and military ministers in the court were already in chaos, as if they had foreseen the scene of Yang Hong going on a killing spree and washing the court with blood. Queen Mother Xiao was sitting on the dragon chair, biting the corner of her lips tightly, clenching her fingers into a ball, and blood dripping from the gaps between her fingers. Click. I saw the palace door being pushed open in the distance. Su Tong was standing outside the palace door, walking towards him. He stepped into the palace door with one foot, and the next moment he appeared in the main hall. He slowly raised his hand and grabbed it forward. In an instant, Queen Mother Xiao's pupils tightened, and she felt as if her heart was about to stop. Ah! It wasn't until a sharp scream that Queen Mother Xiao suddenly woke up. When she looked around, she saw Su Tong holding the maid next to her, standing quietly in the main hall. The palace maid's name was Bai Xiang, and she was a close confidant of Queen Mother Xiao. At this moment, Su Tong was holding her neck, and her body stood there unable to move. "Yang Hong, you are brave." Finally, an old minister pointed at Su Tong angrily. "Yang Hongruo has committed a great rebellion. I'm afraid you can't bear the consequences of this northern barbarian." Su Tong glanced at the old guy and sneered, "You have to try to find out whether you can carry it or not." After hearing this, everyone's faces turned green. Fortunately, Su Tong had no intention of massacring the imperial court, because it was not cost-effective, and his opponents were not the northern barbarian imperial court, nor even Xiaolishan and Su Lai. "There is no need for me to bear this big cause and effect." He came this time just to pull out the hidden stake of Shangqing Dao. With a flick of his finger, a ray of pure yang qi was injected into the palace maid's body. The pure yang energy was like fire. In a moment, the palace maid screamed fiercely, and she could only resist with passive movements. At this moment, the palace maid's strength was immediately exposed, and she was actually a master in the Taoist realm. There are many knowledgeable people in this court, and they can recognize at a glance that the palace maid has hidden mystical skills, and she is not just an ordinary person. Su Tong threw it on the ground and looked at the face of the Queen Mother Xiao in front of him. Although she was a woman, she could still keep calm at this time. She was indeed not an ordinary person. This woman is a hidden stake planted by the Shangqing cult in the court. The tragedy in the Birum Palace was all caused by these people. I am not the only one to blame. If you don't believe me, just use torture to ask. As for the cause and effect between me and your Xiao family, let's clear it up. Xiaolishan helped himself and helped him clear the hidden piles on the Shangqing road, which was a retaliation. More importantly, what Su Tong wants is an honest person. He wants Baman to send him out respectfully, instead of carrying a reputation as a prison escaper. After hearing this, Mrs. Xiao was really smart. She immediately realized that Yang Hong and Xiaolishan might have made an agreement, and they made up their minds in a flash. A decree is sent to put this woman in prison for torture and interrogation. Yang Hong will be exempted from the crime of bloodbathing the palace of the second family. Immediately inform the world that the Shangqing Dao is practicing evil and perverse practices. The people are in dire straits. Local officials should do their best to arrest the remaining culprits of the Shangqing. After Queen Xiao finished speaking, she looked at Su Tong cautiously, as if asking if he was satisfied with the decision. Seeing this, Su Tong continued, "Since it is not my fault, I still ask the Queen Mother to issue an order to withdraw the troops, make a truce, and make peace." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1030. Su Tong moved very quickly, pulling out hidden stakes, clearing the Emperor's side, and giving up the fight with one word. The series of actions seemed to have been premeditated. And it's well founded. Isn't it because I killed the tribal leader of the prince's palace in the beer room that you are fighting? Now that you have found the real murderer, why are you still fighting? To stop fighting and withdraw the troops is my request. Many ministers in the court had evil intentions, but facing Yang Hong, they did not have the courage to oppose him. Even if they don't take action, don't forget how he scolded Zhou Yasheng until he vomited blood and ran away. Even Yasheng couldn't scold him. He was irresponsible and couldn't beat him. So why did he rush to seek death? So after Empress Xiao repeatedly asked the ministers for their opinions, but no one spoke, she decisively ordered the troops to withdraw. The order to retreat has not yet been sent to the battlefield. Su Tong first had a good meal in the palace, but after being in the cell for so long, there was no oil or water in his stomach. A table full of delicacies from all over the world, in his eyes, is just something to fill his stomach. It doesn't matter how good it tastes, he just stuffs it into his mouth. There were 3 kitchens and 18 royal chefs. They worked hard all day and all night, and they were almost exhausted to death, so they could barely let the old man eat a full meal. After having had enough wine and food, Su Tong swaggered out of Zhongdu city under the auspices of Empress Yao and the civil and military officials of the northern Manchu dynasty. In fact, he could have summoned thunder and rushed directly to the battlefield, but he chose not to do so. Instead, he wanted to make a big show of it, hoping to let everyone in the world know that not only did he walk out of prison, but he was also sent off by Empress Yao and the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty. Get off and leave Zhongdu city. This move naturally caused a big wave of publicity. When he was suppressed by Xiaolishan and sent to death row, everyone thought that Yang Hong was finished. Even the old man from Gasu felt that Yang Hong had no chance to turn around this time. But now, Empress Dowager Xiao personally issued an edict to absolve Yang Hong of all his crimes, and even personally escorted him out of the central capital with all the civil and military officials. This change was so big that it was too unbelievable. And the effect of Su Tong's words to stop fighting is even more admired by people all over the world. Whether they are scholars studying, soldiers in the army, or even people in the martial arts world, everyone admires him. In the words of those scholars, a word ends the battle, which is the appearance of a saint. Instead, the soldiers in the army felt that this was the Shen Wuhao who was unrivaled in the world. He used the art of war to the extreme, that is, to conquer others without fighting. As for those people in the world, they can no longer express their inner shock in normal language. They can only say, "It's so humming awesome, I never dare to be so stupid in my dreams." But after Su Tong left Zhongdu, he first met up with Gao Zhou. This guy hid outside and dug hard at the grave. Not to mention, he really dug up a lot of good things. Not to mention the gold, silver, and jewelry burial objects, the key thing is that he found a high-level prop card. This object looks like a huge jade plate with exquisite carvings on it, like some kind of ancient sacrificial object. Barbarian weapon. It is said that the Eastern Yi people, who were later descended from the northern barbarians Teju, fought in all directions and had wonderful achievements. Active skill 1, Sacrifice. At the cost of consuming your own luck, launch a curse on the target. The more luck consumed, the greater the damage the target takes. Passive skill 1, Sacrifice to gods. All spell effects increased by 20%. If the form of the spell complies with rituals, it will be increased by 300%. Note, this is a great gift and a great mantra. If your life is not strong enough and your luck is not strong enough, you will die violently if you hold on to it. I don't know if it's Gao Zhou's good luck or Su Tong's huge luck at the moment, but this thing is really the icing on the cake. Hey, this thing came at the right time. I just need it. Su Tong stopped being polite to Gao Zhou and took the thing over directly. The relationship between the two was like that of real brothers. Gao Zhou also cared about this kind of thing. Instead, he felt that he could help Su Tong, and it would be in vain for him to take the northern barbarians. All the princes' graves were dug up. Then the two of them did not go directly to the front-line battlefield, but came to Songshan Shaolin. Before Su Tong could go up the mountain, the ancient Tibetan monk was already waiting for him in front of the mountain gate. Amitabha, your venerable celestial being has enlightened people, I am so happy and congratulated. Guzhang clasped his hands together and congratulated Su Tong for breaking through the shackles, but he secretly regretted in his heart, what a pity, did you not enter my Buddhist door after all? Su Tong took Gao Zhou and jumped off Sun Li's back. He said bluntly without any nonsense, Master, I'm here to borrow your luck. Can I borrow it? Gozang was also a little surprised when he heard this. He had never heard that this thing could be borrowed. He scratched his shiny head and asked the biggest question since ancient times, can I return it? It is said that when the Five Mountains Sword Alliance was at its peak, Feng Tianhua's master failed to return, and he achieved great success in swordsmanship and soared through the sky. Borrow the world's sword to slay the demon in your heart. A single word of sword will trigger thousands of flying swords. The scene is very spectacular. But he borrowed the sword and never returned it? From then on, everyone in the world cursed this old thief. Ha 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 ha, thanks. Su Tong laughed loudly and said ha ha. He didn't know if he could return this thing, but it was definitely a loan for him. Interception activation. 30,000 screenplay credits were evaporated. This skill consumes 1/3 of his own script points. Su Tong has already transferred the script points in the prop book to the team channel, leaving only 90,000 script points in his hand. In fact, logically speaking, the less you should keep, the better. But if you want to take advantage of the props, you will definitely be the unlucky one. The more script points you consume, the higher the quality of luck you consume. If you keep cheating and cheating, you may directly absorb the other person's bad luck, and you will be the unlucky one. 30,000 script points, plus himself and 1/10 of his lifespan. Gozang immediately noticed something. He suddenly raised his head and saw a big dragon behind Su Tong sticking its head out of the clouds. He opened his mouth and took a breath, taking away most of his luck. Hiss, Amitabha, your majesty is trying to ruin the poor monk's luck of becoming an immortal. Even Guzang, a good old man, felt a pain in his body at this moment. At this time, it is estimated that he will not be able to recover within a few decades. Seeing this, Su Tong quickly comforted him and said, we monks should be dedicated, selfless, and fraternal. I am for everyone, and everyone is for me. Amitabha, so good, so good. As Su Tong clasped his hands together, looking like a bodhisattva, even Guzang couldn't help but want to curse. After devouring half of Guzang's luck, the dragon behind Su Tong became larger and larger. The dragon's body was rising and falling in the clouds. Either a star and a half were exposed, or it was a sign that the dragon was born. Coupled with the national luck of Su Lai and Xiaolishan, it's almost the same. Su Tong looked at his luck that had increased sharply again, and couldn't help but make calculations in his heart. He didn't know where Zhu Yang Zhenjun and old Mangasu were. If you encounter one, you can also borrow their luck. Of course, Su Tong did not let Monk Guzang help him in vain, so he took out an imperial edict from his sleeve and gave it to Guzang. Guzang took it and took a look, and immediately smiled, and no longer bothered about luck. Anyway, this kind of thing, I get it, but I lose my life. At worst, he will become a Buddha in a few years' time and teach Buddhism to the human world, which would be a beautiful thing. Boss, what did you give that made this old monk as happy as if he had eaten stick honey? Gao Zhou looked at Su Tong with satisfaction and confusion. It's not a good thing, it's just an edict from Empress Dowager Xiao, establishing Shaolin Temple as the Zen martial arts section. It turns out that this imperial edict was obtained by Su Tong on behalf of the Shaolin Temple before he left, and he assured him that he and Guzang were good brothers, and it would be better to let Guzang protect the northern barbarians more in the future. Empress Dowager Xiao also heard about the reputation of the ancient Tibetan monks, and thought it was a good deal, so she simply wrote this imperial edict with a stroke of her pen. With this imperial edict, Shaolin Temple has been officially recognized and can be recorded in the history books. For the history books, it is a small step, but for the Shaolin Temple, it is the first step towards becoming a holy place. So when the ancient Tibetan monk saw this imperial edict, he naturally stopped caring about his own luck. By the way, where is Su Fan? At this time, Gao Zhou looked around, but did not see Su Fan. It is said that this guy knew that his patron saint was coming, and he would have run down the mountain in a hurry. Why haven't I seen a shadow yet? When Gao Zhou said this, Gu Zhang's expression suddenly became a little unnatural, and he clasped his hands together, sin, sin, sin. With that, he told Su Tong and Gao Zhou about the masters sent by Prince Eleven's palace to Shaolin Temple to beg people. Although Gu Zhang was in charge of Shaolin, he came here on behalf of the government, and Gu Zhang couldn't fight directly, so he could only secretly protect Su Fan and leave the Shaolin Temple. Hey, old monk, you are not authentic. Gao Zhou curled his lips and felt that what Gu Zhang monk did was not honorable at all. No matter what, Su Fan was brought by Su Tong, and the first sesame oil money from Shaolin Temple was given by Su Fan. It's really unreasonable that Gu Zhang didn't protect Su Fan. As soon as these words came out, Gu Zhang's face turned a little red. It doesn't matter, I'll just go find him. Su Tong could understand Gu Zhang. If he were alone, Prince Eleven's mansion wouldn't dare to come to him for help even if he had the guts to do so. But behind him is the Shaolin Temple. It is understandable that Gu Zhang does not want to involve the Shaolin Temple and leave a historical stain on the Shaolin Temple of monks resisting officials. After all, this temple is an ancient temple for thousands of years in the future. Even if the northern barbarians are gone, other dynasties will change in the future. They will remember that this temple has a history of using force to resist the law. It will be difficult for it to become a holy place for Buddhism in the world in the future. Gu Zhang personally sent the person out of Shaolin and covered his whereabouts. From this point of view, it was quite interesting. So we can't say that Gu Zhang was wrong. Su Tong didn't say anything. With a flash of thought, he activated his plan for a rainy day. The thought entered the timeline. After directly searching for Su Fan's traces, he raised his brows slightly. Hey, isn't this just a dish delivered to your door? Lao Gao, let's go. Su Tong called Gao Zhou and jumped on Sun Li's body, and raised his hands to the ancient Tibetan monk, farewell. After that, he took the thunder and galloped towards the south. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1031. It's chapter 99. Ha, I made a mistake by swiping, I can't change the chapter name, let me tell you. Boss, so you have become an immortal. Riding on Sun Li's back, Gao Zhou and Su Tong chatted. When they talked about Su Tong's current strength, Gao Zhou couldn't help but widen his eyes and stared at Su Tong up and down. His eyes were spinning, and something was stuck in his throat. Held it in for a long time before saying, how about you become my son's godfather? Su Tong curled his lips and said, isn't this something we agreed on earlier? But he continued, but I am not really a god. My current strength is not to the extent that I have truly stepped into Hedeo, but I borrowed it from the future. Su Tong explained to Gao Zhou the second trick he had figured out, to prepare for a rainy day. Simply put, it is borrowing from your own future. The strength borrowed from his future was added to his body, which is his current strength. That is to say, a 20-year-old young man borrows money from his 40-year-old self. Is this the truth? Gao Zhou scratched his head and tried to express his understanding. Right. At this time, Gao Zhou suddenly thought of a question, what if I don't have any money when I'm 40? Regarding this problem, Su Tong was also helpless, that means I did not live to be 40. In fact, the reason is very simple. If you can borrow from your future now, it means that you are still alive in the future. But if you cannot borrow, it means that your future is dead. Of course, this is just a way of saying it. Because the future is full of variables, the future we see at this moment may have become the past. So theoretically speaking, your future is full of variables and countless possibilities, so you can always borrow the power of the future. If he really can't borrow it, then Su Tong has reason to believe that his death will not be in the future, but in the present. Cutting off the present is equivalent to erasing his future. Anyway, if you really try to talk about this set of theories, you won't be able to explain it clearly even if you talk about it for a day and a night. Gao Zhou's head was spinning when he heard this. He felt that this thing was going around and around, and he was confused when he heard it. He quickly changed the topic. Where are we going now? Su Tong narrowed his eyelids. I'm afraid the person on top of the immortal doesn't know that I can already observe the future and gain insight into opportunities. This time he plotted against me in the B-room palace. It's his turn this time. Thinking of this, Su Tong showed his fangs. Hey, let's go to Kifeng Mountain. Kifeng Mountain is also called Kishishan. The 7 mountains are connected together like the Great Wall. At the foot of the mountain, there is a county called Fangcheng County. The county is not big, but it's quieter than anything else. Because it's located in a remote place, even the war didn't have much impact on the place. Young man, you're plain noodles. At the noodle stall, a young man with clean clothes and a handsome face sat there with a grimace. Looking at the plain noodles on the table, he couldn't help but feel a little disgusted. I am used to eating delicacies from the mountains and seas. Even if I eat some vegetarian food in Shaolin Temple, it is cooked by the imperial chef I brought with me. In Su Fan's opinion, this rough food in the mountains was really hard to swallow. But he couldn't bear to think that he was a common man with a mortal body. Despite the growling protests in his stomach, Su Fan still picked up the bowl and chopsticks and tried to stuff a mouthful of noodles into his mouth. Not bad. When people are hungry, everything they eat tastes delicious. The more Su Fan ate, the more delicious it became. When he was holding the bowl and stuffing it into his mouth, a boy walked over and looked at Su Fan and let out a ha 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 laugh. This boy is about 7 or 8 years old. Although he is a boy, he is cuter than a little girl. He laughs like a bell and does not sound bored at all. Su Fan looked the boy up and down, with confusion on his face, and continued eating while holding the bowl and chopsticks. Unexpectedly, when the boy saw this, instead of leaving, he came forward and sat next to Su Fan, lying on the table and staring at him with wide eyes. This made Su Fan start to murmur in his heart. He finished the noodles in his hands and shouted to the ant at the noodle stall, "Auntie, 2 more bowls of noodles." Okay. After a while, 2 bowls of hot plain noodles were served on the table. Su Fan brought 1 bowl to the boy. "This bowl is for you to eat." The boy was startled, then became polite, picked up his chopsticks and started eating. Hiss. However, Su Fan's brows suddenly tightened, and he covered his stomach with a painful look on his face. "Well, ant, the latrine is over there. Just turn left ahead." The ant pointed forward. Okay, Su Fan stood up holding his stomach and glanced at the boy. "You can't eat my noodles secretly." Hey, I'll be back soon." After Su Fan said this, he suddenly raised his buttocks. As if he couldn't bear it, he turned around, covered his buttocks, and ran towards the latrine. When the boy saw this, he snorted coldly, "What a treacherous Uncle Suguo." After all, regardless of the fact that Uncle Suguo escaped, he just sat leisurely in the noodle shop and ate noodles. He only waited for the bowl of noodles to be finished before he picked up the noodles on the table in a leisurely manner. Another bowl of noodles, he stood up and disappeared into the crowd. Hoo. On the rugged path, Su Fan was out of breath and his forehead was covered with beads of sweat. Fortunately, following Su Tong, eating dragon rice porridge every day, and recuperating in the Shaolin Temple, it played a big role. Otherwise, running down this way, half of his life would probably be at stake. Why are you pretending to be bad? Pretending to be a thief? Use your brain. In this wretched place, you use high-quality sujin to make clothes for your children? Isn't this a big fool? Su Fan cursed and complained. When he first saw that child, he knew in his heart that he was in big trouble. It's hard to tell where he came from, but the clothes he was wearing were enough to feed ordinary people for 3 years. These are still children's clothes. I don't know what other people's families are like, but my housekeeper's son only gets a new set of clothes every New Year, and they are made of coarse cotton. That alone is amazing. Su Fan's Hung took advantage of the time to complain, took a few breaths, and was about to continue running. Fangcheng County was no longer safe, so he could only run, and it was impossible to go back to the south. His father would catch him and break his bones. Flying ashes. But the world is so big, where can I go? If I had known earlier, I would have gone out to fight with Yang Hong. It would be a pleasure to die on the battlefield. Su Fan was regretting it when he suddenly saw a bowl of noodles delivered to him. When he looked up, he saw the boy standing in front of him, staring at him with a smile. "Why are you running so fast? I brought you your bowl of noodles." Su Fan's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately stepped back, staring at the boy in front of him. "Who are you? I have never heard of a person like you in the world." "The world?" The boy grinned and looked at Su Fan meaningfully. "The world you see is too small. The small world can only accommodate a few people, so how can you know me?" Then he put the bowl of noodles into Su Fan's hand. "Eat quickly. After finishing this bowl of noodles, we can get on our way." Plop. Su Fan's face turned pale. He thought he was sending him off on his way. He held the bowl of noodles with his face ashen for a moment. He didn't expect that after struggling for so long, he ended up with just a bowl of plain noodles to send him off. It's ridiculous when you think about it carefully. I have lived in luxury for half my life, but my last meal was ridiculously simple. Seeing Su Fan's face turned ashen, the boy's laughter became even clearer. "Idiot, I don't want to kill you, I just want to take you back. Go back." Su Fan was excited at this moment and stared at the boy. "Where are you going back? Where are you coming from? Where are you going back? Your father misses you very much. How about I reunite you and your son?" Behind the boy's hands, there is a sense of vicissitudes of life that does not match his age. For a moment, Su Fan felt like he was being held in someone's hand, and the corner of his mouth twitched. I'm warning you, my eldest brother is Yang Hong, don't mess around, believe it or not, I'll call my eldest brother, big brother might come to pick me up." At this point, Su Fan could only talk nonsense. In fact, he didn't know what happened to Yang Hong now. Even Su Tong's defeat by Xiaolishan was unknown to Su Fan when he stayed in the Shaolin Temple. The boy frowned. "Then I advise you not to shout." As he said that, he reached out to grab Su Fan, preparing to take Su Fan away by force. "No, if you do this, I will call, Brother Yang, save me." "Ha ha ha, even if you shout until your throat is broken, no one can come to save you." The boy grinned widely and grabbed Su Fan's shoulder with his young hands. But the moment his hand touched Su Fan, time seemed to freeze at this moment. Wrong. In the blink of an eye for a third of the time, the boy's heart became alert, and a crystal thought emerged between his eyebrows, grabbing the boy's body out of this chaotic time. Puff. But even so, it was a step too slow. The sword light slashed out from the future, and when the blood poured out from the boy's severed arm, it became reality. "Ah!" The boy let out a scream and saw Su Tong's figure already appearing in front of Su Fan. "Yang Hong! Why are you here?" The boy screamed, finding Yang Hong's appearance unbelievable. They had seen the future, shouldn't Yang Hong appear here? "Do you think you are the only one who can peek into the future? The future is not trustworthy, and whoever believes in it will be stupid." Su Tong walked forward with his sword in hand, and when he waved the sword, the time around him began to lose track. Now the boy panicked, and the thought on his forehead suddenly burst out of his body at this moment, but it was not to attack Su Tong, but to run for his life. The boy's cultivation level was just that of a first-time Earth immortal. Only with the blessing of the thought of the Supreme Lord, could he have the magical means. However, facing Su Tong, who was at the same level as Hideo, it was not enough. The boy also became an abandoned child at this moment and was frozen in time. If you want to run away, there's no way. The moment Su Tong's sword struck, he activated it in preparation for a rainy day. His figure traveled across the future and appeared early on the escape route of this thought. The moment the thought flew towards him, a sword hit this thought. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1032. Boom. That thought was as hard as a diamond, but it couldn't resist Su Tong's head-on strike with a sword. Suddenly, his thoughts almost exploded, and he was slammed to the ground, exploding a huge hole in the ground. Yang Hong, you have ruined my good deeds and violated the gods again and again. You are tampering with the script. This is against the rules. The thought manifested the figure of the true Lord of Shangsheng. He glared at Su Tong and sternly reprimanded, "You are the chosen one. The result of what you do will make the gods angry. Don't forget that your identity was given to you by the gods. Yes, even the gods can take it back. The chosen ones have existed since ancient times, such as those mythical figures in history. Their prototypes are the chosen ones. It is precisely because of the existence of these chosen ones that various sects and practices have been introduced into reality. Realm and reality are not so much two worlds as the yin and yang of each other's achievements. The chosen one is the I in this yin and yang. Being able to cultivate and become an immortal in a mortal body is an opportunity. Therefore, in the eyes of the gods, these chosen ones are their slaves and tools, and they must also be grateful to the gods." "Oh, that's really, thank you." Su Tong had a look of realization on his face, but he showed no mercy at all. The long sword stole a moment and appeared to reflect the future Buddha. Su Tong's figure was blurred, and the chaotic time around him formed a blockade, making it impossible for this thought to escape. "Can you hide?" Dense sword-shaped thoughts emerged from Su Tong's brows. When these thoughts were waved in unison, Su Tong's figure split into countless pieces in an instant and scattered in any corner of the future. Immediately after countless sword lights struck down, Zhenjun Shangsheng wanted to dodge, but the direction in which he dodged had been seen by Su Tong's future figure, so that it was more like him hitting Su Tong's sword himself. On the blade. In just an instant, the thought was hit by a sword like a rainstorm, and the thought that was originally crystal clear like a diamond suddenly made a harsh shattering sound. "Yang Hong, you're looking for death, you bastard, you unfamiliar dog." At the moment when the thought was shattered, the thought of the Shangsheng Zhenjun roared angrily until Su Tong's pure yang sword appeared above his head and split it open with one sword. Click. The sword edge flashed for a moment, and his thoughts were split into two. Before Su Tong could take action, De Yatuo rushed out holding the fairy furnace and sat cross-legged on the fairy furnace. Yun Xiang opened his mouth and sucked the thought into two parts. He breathed half of it into the fairy furnace and the other half. Half of them were ordered by Dia to package the seals and send them to Su Tong. "Now that I have the materials for alchemy, my master can easily handle his tasks." Throwing the sealed thoughts into the Ruyi furnace, Su Tongke put away all the thoughts that escaped into the future. As the time chaos disappeared, the surrounding time returned to normal in an instant, but with a slight after effect, the surrounding dense woods turned yellow in a blink of an eye. For Su Fan, it was just a blink of an eye. Ah! The screams brought Su Fan back to his senses. The boy who had just reached out to grab him fell to the ground holding his broken arm. Just when Su Fan didn't understand what happened, Su Tong put a hand on his shoulder. "Is everything okay?" Su Fan was startled. When he turned around and saw Su Tong's straight and tall figure, his eye circles instantly turned red. This damn sense of security almost filled his empty father's love. If he hadn't been about the same age as Su Tong, Su Fan would have almost shouted the word "Dad." Fortunately, the untimely screams of the boy on the side finally made Su Fan sober up. Yang Hong, you are so brave. The Supreme Lord will not let you go. He will definitely let you die without a burial place in heaven or on earth. Although the boy looks like a child, he is actually over 100 years old, but he was still young when he became an Earth Immortal, so his appearance always looks like a boy. Seeing that he was still stubborn at this point, Su Tong glanced at the boy with his life ikemen and Zhenmutong. You are extremely lucky, a rare blessing, and have excellent bones. If you meet a famous teacher, you may be able to set foot in the land of gods in a dignified manner in only 30 years, but the Supreme Lord is leaving for you. Taking a shortcut has caused you to overdraw your luck and potential early, so your cultivation realm will never be able to take a step forward. When Su Tong said this, the boy's face changed slightly. Don't you understand by now? From the moment you were born, you were destined to become the pawns of the true Lord of the Supreme Being, used to nourish his split thoughts, and you have been making wedding clothes for him throughout your life. Now the boy's face became more and more ugly. In fact, he had already had this conjecture in his mind, because the Supreme Lord Shang Sheng had an idea and asked them to find Yao Qing who had not yet set foot in cultivation. He was telling them that they should use Yao Qing to practice. Qing nourished him to split this idea. At that time, he had thought about whether he and Le Nu were like this, but he didn't dare to think about it, and he didn't want to think about it. Now that Su Tong has ruthlessly exposed this reality, not only does Tongzi not hate the true Lord Shang Sheng, but he resents Su Tong even more because he exposed the last trace of his sweet dream in his heart. I will fight with you. The boy stood up holding his wound, just wanting to fight Su Tong, but as soon as he stood up, a huge handprint was photographed from behind. Vitality Mahamudra. Boom. This slap caught the boy off guard and he was slapped directly to the ground. Ha ha ha, I've made a lot of money now. Gao Zhou was seen walking from a short distance away, followed by Dichu, who had turned into a zombie. Without the blessing of divine thoughts, this boy's strength is only slightly stronger than those first-class masters who have entered the Dao level. Even if he encounters those ruthless characters, he may not be his opponent. This seems to have been deliberately arranged by the true Lord Shang Sheng, to prevent them from having the possibility of backlash. Gao Zhou doesn't care about his strength. Materials for land gods are really rare, boss, I don't have to do anything for you, just leave it to me. Gao Zhuozhu happily summoned a coffin and threw the person directly in. Of course, the broken arm was not wasted and was thrown into the coffin. Anyway, it can still be used for repairs. Su Tong actually sympathized with this guy, but seeing his unrepentant look, he knew that this guy was hopeless. Since Gao Zhou was willing to deal with it, it would save him trouble. Let's go. Su Tong patted Su Fan who was still stunned. Go, where? Su Fan hurriedly followed Su Tong, fearing that he would be lost again. The war is over, go see your father. Ah! Su Fan was stunned for a moment. Su Tong's short sentence made him unable to digest it. He opened his mouth wide. He didn't know whether to ask why the war ended suddenly or why he wanted to find it at this time. His father promised to come. Just when Su Fan still didn't understand what happened, the clouds in the sky above his head surged, and a strong wind came with a strong sense of oppression. The golden ship was seen slowly tearing apart the clouds, revealing the complete hull. Hey, this thing is so handsome. Gao Zhou raised his head and looked at the battleship with squinted eyes, drooling with greed. This is... Su Fan was stunned for a few seconds and hurriedly hid behind Su Tong. Fortunately, Su Tong comforted him, don't worry, we are one of our own. One of our own. Su Fan didn't understand what this meant, but he saw Yeliki's figure. Was this guy one of his own? The battleship slowly fell, and Yeliki was seen standing on the deck, his eyes scanning Su Tong's body, with a slight smile on his lips, but it made people feel that there was a knife hidden in the smile, which was meaningful. I don't know if it was intentional, but the battleship's guns were always locked on Su Tong. This guy can't pretend to be real, can he? Gao Zhou couldn't help but murmur in his heart when he looked at Chang Wogu's playful expression. Whether he wanted to fake it or not, the thought really flashed through Chang Wuhan's mind, but in the end he suppressed the murderous intention. He had no chance of winning now, so he should wait until next time. Boom! The ladder on the deck hit the ground. Su Tong took Gao Zhou and Su Fan onto the battleship. Although his teammates were gathering, Chang Wuhan still had to maintain Yeliki's airs, raising his head proudly. "Hey, let's go. If my uncle hadn't said I want to pick you up, I really want you to taste the power of my cannon." Su Tong shook the pure yang sword in his hand and made a pun. "Then tell me, should I dismantle the barrel of the cannon this time, or dismantle the magazine?" Chang Wuhan's face darkened, he turned around angrily and muttered, "I'll kill you sooner or later." The bickering demeanor of the two saves them a lot of cover. In the eyes of outsiders, Yeliki was probably eager to cut Yang Hong into pieces. Even when he was eating, there was a murderous look in his eyes. Gao Zhou looked around like a normal person. He even marked the rooms he liked. "Boss, can we take this thing back? It must be brought back. The cost of millions of taels of gold is enough to buy an aircraft carrier in reality. If we don't bring it back, wouldn't we be at a huge loss?" Chang Wogu knows the cost of the Sun God ship best. He keeps a close eye on the materials used on it and even the cost of a nail. No one dares to do anything on it. The materials and labor are all the best. For this reason, the northern barbarian's treasury was almost emptied. If he didn't take it back, he would be really sorry for his life as a supervisor for more than 2 months. "It's not difficult, just throw it into my reality." No need to be reminded by Chang Unju, Su Tongyu would not let go of this battleship. He even felt that if this battleship was taken back and reprocessed, it might become the main combat tool of their team in the future. The three of them chatted in the team, and Su Tong also learned that Su Lai had ordered the withdrawal of the army, but he and Xiao Lishan met 7 days later to fight to the death on the top of Langshan Mountain. The luck of the two people has been entangled with each other. If the two dragons are fighting each other, if there is no winner, the luck will inevitably backfire after they return this time. By then, the two people will be greatly affected, and at least they will fall into the realm. Or at worst, a life may be lost. Hearing the news, Su Fan was confused for a moment. Although he was at odds with the old guy Su Lai, he still hoped that his father would win. But if he wins, what does it have to do with him? Su Tong sat next to Su Fan, as if he had read his thoughts. "Don't worry, they can't fight." "Can't they fight?" Su Fan shook his head. "It's impossible. Their fates have already been determined. It's not up to them. The two dragons are destined to fight. If they fight, they still have a chance to survive. If they don't fight, neither of them will survive. This is fate. Hey, you have the final say on your own life. If I say they can't fight, because..." Su Tong raised his head and crossed his arms behind his head. "They can't beat me." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1033. The northern barbarians retreated. Empress Dowager Xiao personally issued the order and cleared Yang Hong's grievances. Not only that, she also personally escorted Su Tong out of the city. Compared with his grudges, Yang Hong showed his righteousness and magnanimity by speaking out and stopping fighting. Live with the people and win the favor of people all over the world. Whether it is the citizens or the grasshoppers, no one wants to cause chaos in the world. Even the beggars in the beggar gang were bragging about Yang Hong, saying that he was deliberately defeated by Xiao Lishan to investigate the murder case, secretly find out the truth, and serve the country and the people. Fortunately Su Tong didn't hear it, otherwise even his shamelessness would be unbearable. In fact, this also means that no one wants to fight. If the world is in chaos, Will life be easy? Can scholars still concentrate on reading Jinping Mei? Can martial arts practitioners still concentrate on practicing Fang Zongshu? Ahem, this is off topic. In short, no one wants to cause chaos in the world. Oh, except for a few small countries on the border. I don't know what they are doing. I heard that a coalition of 180,000 people was formed in a mighty way. But when I asked, they all had an impression, but it seemed that no one was there. Pass. It was originally a happy event for the two countries to withdraw from the war, but now another incident has affected the minds of people all over the world. Xiaolishan and Su Lai, the situation where the two dragons are fighting has finally come. It is inevitable that the two of them will fight in Langshan, which also makes many people start to worry. Both of them are carrying the fate of the country. The defeat of one side means that the national games behind it will be broken up, and there is no guarantee that war will not break out again. Whether it is the northern barbarians or the Tiangan, although both sides have retreated, their troops have not returned to the court. Instead, they have gathered their troops with Langshan as the boundary. Once one of the sides is defeated, the other side may take advantage of the victory to attack. Break the yellow dragon. If both of them lose, it may be another endless bloody battle between the troops on both sides. At the foot of Langshan, a large number of Jianghu people came after hearing the news. In fact, this is not wise. After all, Langshan is at the center of the whirlpool. Once involved in the war, they, the Jianghu masters, may not be able to get an advantage from those soldiers. After all, fighting on the battlefield and fighting in rivers and lakes are two different things. But even this can't stop everyone from wanting to watch the battle. After all, Su Lai and Xiaolishan are recognized as the second and third people in the world. Unless the one from Longhu Mountain comes out, who can fight with the two of them? This duel is enough to be praised in the world. Even if it is not included in the annals of history, it will definitely be remembered throughout the ages. Hey, I'm so worried. It would be great if the world could be peaceful for a few more years. At least I could let my son grow up. Who says it's not the case? My father will be 80 next year. At least he asked me to pay him his last respects. The group of people squatted and waited at the foot of Langshan Mountain. When it came to the troubled times in the future, no one had any idea. Even if they were strong in martial arts and could escape from the war, what about their families, wives, and children? Where are the parents? When the world is in chaos, everyone will have no control over it. No matter whether it is the masters of the world or the common people, no one can stay away from the world. While the group was worried, someone looked sideways. I saw old Mangasu squatting on a big black stone, holding a cigarette pole in one hand and a small book in the other. His eyebrows were almost twisted into a ball. He had been sitting here all morning, but he couldn't say a single word. Not even written down. There are obviously a lot of things to write in my heart, but when I raise the pen, I can't write a single word. This may be the process of writing. Seeing this, many people with active minds came forward and brought them good wine and food, just in exchange for a few words of advice from the old man. Mr. Gasu, who do you think can win this battle? Old man Gasu took a puff of cigarette but did not respond. Then, if the world is in chaos in the future, where will we people go? Old man Gasu exhaled a puff of smoke, but still did not respond. Seeing that old man Gasu just frowned and did not speak, everyone began to feel unsure. Finally, someone gritted his teeth and took out a jar of 20-year-old daughter's red wine from his backpack and handed it over. Old sir, our Longway escort agency has been working hard for more than 100 years. Although we have little savings, we have no children and only one child. My young daughter, if the future is really troubled, where will she go? The person who spoke was the head of the Longway escort agency. He was said to be a Jianghu person, but he had a close relationship with the Buman and Tianqian officials. In troubled times, all it takes in the court is a gust of breeze to make them, the wallflowers, die without a burial place. So I came here today to see the outcome of this battle and to be prepared. When I met the old Mangasu today, I also wanted to ask for peace of mind. Seeing the head of Longway escort pouring the wine himself, old Mangasu finally spoke, but he only said one word, wait. Wait. Everyone looked at each other, but the head of Longway Escort Bureau refused to give up and asked, what are you waiting for? But this time, old Mangasu ignored him. Coming. At this time, someone in the crowd suddenly screamed. When everyone looked around, they saw a group of people marching in mighty force. They were an elite group of Tiangan, holding a lion-headed banner. It's Su Lai. Everyone was refreshed and raised their heads to look. Speaking of which, there may be many people who have met Xiaolishan, but not many people have actually met Su Lai. After all, Su Lai sits in court every day and rarely goes out. It is not easy for people in the world to see his true appearance. This elite group stopped without getting close to Langshan. They stood on the edge of Langshan from a distance and watched a carriage drive towards Langshan. Da-da-da-da. The old horse walked very slowly, but it took more than 10 minutes to cover the distance of 1,000 meters. When they arrived at the foot of Langshan Mountain, the carriage stopped, the curtains opened, and Su Lai stepped out of the carriage. He took off his gorgeous clothes and took off the golden crown on his head. It was as if at this moment, Su Lai had taken off all the auras on his body. He just wore an old clothes and a small hat and walked up the mountain with his hands behind his back. If I hadn't known that this was Su Lai, I would have thought he was an old woodcutter who went up the mountain to cut firewood. Su is here, and Xiaolishan. It's already here a long time ago. Look at the top of Wolf Mountain. I saw smoke rising from the top of Langshan Mountain at some point. Anyone who dared to stay on Langshan Mountain at this time would be seeking death. Therefore, the person who dares to light a fire on Langshan is probably no one except Xiaolishan. Watching Su Lai walking up the mountain step by step, everyone turned their attention to old Mangasu. He seemed to be asking him, now that Su Lai is here, what are you waiting for? But old Mangasu had no intention of looking at Su Lai, and instead looked north. It seemed that he didn't care that Su Lai had already gone to Langshan and a big battle was about to begin. Instead, he was worried about the others. Da-da-da. At this time, a rush of horse hooves suddenly came from the distance, making everyone nervous again. I saw a group of people and horses in the distance, approaching in a mighty manner. Before they even got close, the murderous aura made many people breathless. It's the Shinwu army. Some people couldn't help being surprised when they saw who was coming. It's really them. Oh my God, this army is so terrifying. Some people had seen this army outside Zhongdu city. At that time, they only thought that this army was extraordinary. As the old man from Gasu said, it could be the magic sword among the armies in the world. But today's army gave people the impression of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Just by approaching, it made people feel as if the sky behind them was dyed with blood. When the old Mangasu saw this, he couldn't help but frown. He felt that this divine sword was now more like a blood-stained magic sword. The killing power was so strong that even he felt depressed. Gu Zibai raised his arms, and all the troops behind him stopped moving. Even the horses under his crotches stopped for the first time. It was as if the team had pressed the pause button in an instant. This military discipline alone made everyone admire them deeply. In contrast, the gap between the Tiangan elite who came with Su Lai was immediately widened. It's true that people have to die when compared with others, and goods have to be thrown away when comparing goods. The huge gap between the two made the warriors who were also heavenly stewards blush with embarrassment. Fortunately, the young general who led the troops did not take it seriously. Instead, he waved his hand towards Gu Zibai, "Old Bai, come this way." Gu Zibai took a look and saw that it was Li Bo. This kid is indeed a lucky star. He used to hide in the mountains and took advantage of the geographical advantage to wipe out almost all the remnants of the three kingdoms. He made a lot of money just from the script points. The most important thing is that this kid killed so many people. People, however, were not stained with the mark of killing like Guzibai. Maybe he felt that too many people died in the mountains and it was unlucky to live there. Libo went out of the mountains early. As soon as he came out of the mountains, he caught up with the news of the retreat of the troops from both sides. He randomly picked up some rags in the mountains and went back to exchange for a military merit, which was an official promotion. Level 3. Although the speed of promotion is not as terrifying as that of Su Tong, in terms of position, this guy is the tallest one in the team. Sometimes people really have to wonder if this kid has any hidden attributes. Every time at critical moments, his luck is surprisingly good. Where's the boss? Isn't he here yet? Libo called Su Tong in the team channel, and soon he heard Su Tong's voice coming from the team channel, "Here he comes." With Su Tong's response, the old man from Gasu, who was squatting on the stone, suddenly raised his head, his eyes widened under his cloudy eyelids, staring at the mound in the distance. He came. Everyone was startled when they heard this. They didn't know who was coming. They all stood on tiptoes and looked at old man Gasu's eyes. They waited for a while, but they still didn't see anyone. "Senior Gasu, who is here?" everyone asked in low voices, but old man Gasu seemed not to hear it and looked ahead excitedly. He's here, I didn't expect that he really became an immortal." When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other, and even wondered whether the old man Gasu was crazy. But at this moment, a wisp of breeze blew, and I saw a white shadow walking on the mound in the distance, with fluttering white clothes and light steps. Before anyone arrived, the voice came first. "The pure yang sweeps away the sun, moon, and stars, and steals an inch of time with a sword. From now on, there will be no sword leader in the world, and everything is up to me and not others." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1034. His, Yang Hong. When everyone heard the poem, their expressions suddenly changed with shock. Yang Hong's coming here was exactly what people expected, but it was also unexpected. In the midst of horror, they saw that figure striding towards them. Wherever they went, it seemed as if a pure yang wind was blowing up, sweeping away the gloom in people's hearts. It seems that wherever he is, people feel an unprecedented sense of security. The most important thing is that Su Tong no longer hides his luck. Anyone who knows a little bit about the art of observing Qi can see the huge divine dragon disappearing and appearing behind him. What kind of magical luck is this? When some people saw a tiny bit of Su Tong's luck through the Qi gazing technique, they were already frightened. Su Lai and Xiaolishan are both the best among the best in the world, and their strength has even touched the threshold of becoming an immortal. The reason for this is precisely because the two of them are blessed by national destiny. Some people in the world also wanted to follow suit, such as joining Tubo, Xixia and other countries, hoping to use the national fortunes of these countries to practice cultivation, but the result was often not a happy ending. Because these countries are too weak and their luck is inherently bad, but if you still want to use this opportunity to practice cultivation, your luck will bite you back. So this is destined to be a path that is difficult for ordinary people to imitate. Rumor has it that when Zhang Xian came out of the mountain, he relied on the 1,000-year luck of Longhu Mountain to defeat the two of them. But at this moment, Yang Hong's luck turned out to be even worse. The divine dragon is entrenched and swallowing up the world. Could it be that he is already? Some people secretly guessed that they already had that idea in their hearts, but they did not dare to say it directly. Become an immortal by uniting with the Tao, This is the realm that practitioners all over the world aspire to. But throughout history, few people have succeeded. If Yang Hong really takes the step, then it will be true as he said, everything in the world will be controlled by him. I saw Su Tong strolling over, looking at Gu Zibai, and found that the guy's head was so red that it was almost bleeding. The huge murderous aura was like burning firewood, constantly evaporating their luck. Sure enough, this main mission is a trap, right? When Su Tong saw this, he cursed in his heart that this was really shameless. The main mission also brought negative buffs to himself. It seems that Lord Shangsheng is really impatient. But it's useless for him to be anxious now. He will soon come to him in person to talk to him about his life. I saw Su Tong walking next to Gu Zibai and others, and a pure yang energy spread out and moistened the bodies of these soldiers. For a moment, the restless heartstrings of these soldiers gradually calmed down. Meet the general. 3,000 soldiers from the Xinwu camp all knelt down and worshipped in front of Su Tong. Although Su Tong has now been dismissed from the position of Siping general, in the hearts of these soldiers, the only general in the Xinwu camp is Yang Hong, and even the emperor is not qualified to instruct them. Wait for me here. Su Tong nodded, left a word, and walked to Langshan alone. At the foot of Langshan mountain, everyone watched Yang Hong's figure getting closer and closer. Instead of feeling scary, under the huge pure yang energy, they felt unprecedentedly comfortable all over their bodies, as if all the burdens on their bodies had disappeared. Until Yang Hong walked by, everyone was still stunned, but they saw the old man Gasu got up and followed Yang Hong up the mountain. Hey, why did he follow you up? Aren't you afraid of being affected? If Xiaolishan and Su Liao were to fight, they would not feel safe standing at the foot of Langshan mountain, let alone going up the mountain to watch the battle. Now that Yang Hong has been added, I don't know what the situation will be like. If a fight breaks out and the three of them sneeze, a large number of people may die. No matter what, just follow him and take a look. The worst possible outcome is death. Someone gritted his teeth and decided to follow. I am coming too. After all, it is a fight between gods and gods. Let alone this life, we may not meet it in the next life. If we cannot witness it with our own eyes, we will regret it for the rest of our lives. Suddenly more and more people started walking up the mountain. Yang Hong, are you really, in harmony? Old man Gasu followed Su Tong, and the two of them walked forward step by step, walking very slowly, neither showing any magical power nor relying on Qinggong, just like ordinary people walking. It took a lot of courage for the old man from Gasu to ask this question. He has been in this realm for many years, but he is so far away from Hideo that he has not even seen the door. Sometimes he himself doubts whether there are really people who become immortals in this world. Although there are many rumors in the world, the number is too few. Feng Tian, who was master, was still remembered by the world because he borrowed the sword and refused to return it. Apart from this, other records are mostly vague and unclear, or mostly based on rumors. Perhaps it is because of this question that the old man from Gasu is so keen on recording Jianghu stories. Because he thought that if he had no chance of becoming an immortal in this life, he might be able to witness with his own eyes or even record the moment when others became immortals, which would make his life worthwhile. So now he is eager to confirm whether Yang Hong has really taken that step. This was very important to him, even more important than his life. Su Tong did not answer him, but only said, "Then just follow me and take a look. Then you will know." Ken. Old man Gasu wanted to break the pot and ask for the truth, but Su Tong just patted old man Gasu on the shoulder. There are more important things than becoming an immortal. I need to record it, spread it to the world, and let the world remember it. More important things. Old man Gasu's breathing became rapid. He had already learned from Yang Hong's words that something bigger was about to happen. While the two were talking, they had already reached the top of the mountain. Surprisingly, On the top of the mountain, Su Lai and Xiaolishan were sitting in front of the bonfire, as if waiting for him. Seeing Su Tong walking up the mountain, the two people looked at Su Tong with complicated emotions in their eyes. There are surprises, envy, and jealousy. Su Tong walked forward, sat by the bonfire, and warmed his hands. I want to go to the top of the immortal. Do you want to go together? Su Lai and Xiaolishan were not surprised when they heard this, but their expressions were bitter and they felt that Yang Hong had simplified things. Su Lai pointed to the top of his head and saw that his and Xiaolishan's luck was like two giant dragons, entangled together and getting tighter and tighter. If the two of them could not tell whether they were alive or dead today, they would not only be unlucky. The national fortunes of both countries will collapse. By that time, even if there is no war between the two countries, there will be continuous natural and man-made disasters, and the people on the land will not be able to make a living. It's difficult. Old Mangasu raised his head and looked at the entangled fate of the two people. If I had known this, why did I do it in the first place? Humph, why bother in the first place? Su Lai snorted coldly and glanced at old Mangasu. Did you know that we were originally brothers with different surnames, and our fates were not the same? It's just that someone changed our fates. This was already destined. Matter. To fight or not to fight is not up to us. How much do you know about the water behind this? Xiaolishan said softly, stroking the Mengtai sword in his hand. Old Mangasu was also surprised. Unexpectedly, the words of these two top men revealed the feeling that they were born involuntarily. He hurriedly took out his small notebook and wanted to write down this passage. Su Tong stretched out his hand to hold down the old Mangasu, and saw him stand up. Hey, isn't this just right? If you don't want this luck, you might as well give it to me. For you. Yes, give it to me. While Su Tong was speaking, the clouds and mist surged behind him, and the divine dragon poked its head out from the clouds. As Su Tong activated the luck interception technique, it rushed into the entangled fate of the two. For a moment, the giant dragon surged toward the luck above the two of them. Roar! Perhaps sensing the danger, the two dragons all wrapped around the giant dragon. However, in front of the huge body of the dragon, these two dragons seemed to be a head shorter. With a sweep of the divine dragon's tail, the bodies of the two dragons were torn apart. The huge dragon claws were torn from between the two, and he grabbed the dragon that was in Su Lai's luck and bit it down in one bite. Suddenly the dragon screamed, and in an instant most of his luck was swallowed up. Puff! Most of his luck was forcibly taken away, and even Su Lai couldn't bear it. His face was like gold paper, with blood bleeding from all 7 holes. He is different from Guzang. What Guzang has is personal luck. It doesn't matter if Su Tong borrows it. But what Su Lai and the two have is national luck. Moreover, they are still in a special state at this moment. If they are forcibly interrupted, they will naturally suffer huge backlash. The sun is going well. Upon seeing this, Su Tong directly called out the great Sun Ruyi furnace. The furnace ignited, and the thunder liquid inside began to boil. A large amount of life essence spilled down like a waterfall and was instilled into Su Lai's body. At the same time, Xiaolishan's luck was also in jeopardy. He was targeted by the dragon, and his huge body crushed him directly. Xiaolishan almost lost half his life in one bite. Su Tong also used the Ruyi furnace to heal Xiaolishan's injuries. It was originally a situation where two dragons were fighting, but now Su Tong intervened and interrupted it abruptly. Such a method was unheard of and unprecedented. And Su Tong's luck reached an unprecedented peak at this moment. The dragon rises and everything changes. The giant dragon only shook its body slightly, and everyone involuntarily felt a strong shaking feeling in their hearts, as if their fate had been entangled with this giant dragon invisibly. No. No, it should be said that the fate of everyone in the world has been entangled with this giant dragon. What kind of luck is this? It's already affecting the world. It's too terrifying. The whole world will prosper and die because of his one thought. Even the rumored saint is nothing more than that. Those people in the world who followed Su Tong up the mountain, even if they didn't know the art of fortune-telling, could see the huge dragon shadow behind Su Tong. It was so big that it could influence the rise and fall of the world in a single thought. Is this the strength of an immortal? Everyone was panicking, but the only thing they were thankful for was the huge pure yang energy in Yang Hong's body, which gave everyone an unprecedented sense of security, as if he was the pillar of heaven and earth, the Dingai Shenzhen. After thinking about Yang Hong's various actions since he became famous, everyone's hearts have calmed down. Not only are they no longer afraid, but they want to actively support him. But among the crowd, only the attentive old man from Gasu discovered that Su Tong had a few more white hairs on his temples at some time, and the number of white hairs was still increasing. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1035. Now that the ropes that bind you have been broken, why don't you go to the Immortal Summit with me without these shackles? The fate of the fight between the two dragons was over. Xiaolishan and Su Lai were like wild beasts raised in a circus. The first time they broke free, they thought of the trainer who had killed them. Ahem, your method is really simple and crude. Xiaolishan stood up, and the aura on his body burst out unfettered. The unstoppable sword intent made everyone feel chilled. My traitorous son is in your hands. Su Lai followed closely behind. He was not good at swordsmanship, but he had a royal and domineering aura surging around his body. He opened his hands and lightly clenched his fists, which made the entire Langshan tremble. Su Fan, don't worry, he's very fine. He's up there. Su Tong pointed at the clouds in the distance, and when Su Lai looked around, he could see through the clouds and mist and locked onto Su Fan, who was standing on the deck. Su Fan was so frightened that he trembled all over and almost fell off the deck. Seeing that Su Fan was fine, Su Lai's mouth finally revealed a sinister smile. In that case, let's get on the road now. Su Lai had a new and old hatred for Shangqing Dao. After being a puppet for so many years, he finally looked forward to this day. Although it was different from what he planned, it didn't matter. Don't worry, there's just one more thing to do. Su Tong shook his head instead. What's going on? We can't delay it any longer, the comet hitting the moon is coming soon. Su Lai had to remind Su Tong that once the comet hits the moon, the world's luck will be in chaos, and his advantage will no longer exist. It's ridiculous to say that before, they tried every means to delay time, for fear that they wouldn't be able to delay the comet hitting the moon. But now, they were eager to take Yang Hong to the top of the immortal without even wanting to wait for half a minute. It really echoes that sentence, time is like fate, things in the world are unpredictable and the changes are endless. Ha, we really can't get around this matter. Su Tong knew Su Lai's good intentions, but he really couldn't get around this matter. Fortunately, it's not a troublesome matter, just asking for help. Just helping. Help. Xiaolishan and Su Lai looked strange for a moment. Not to mention the two of them murmuring in their hearts, even the people in the world who were following behind felt strange. At this moment, Yang Hong could control the rise and fall of the world with just one thought. What else did he need to find someone for? Helpful. Haha, this man is a wonderful person. He is down there. We might as well go and meet him together. Su Tong took the lead and didn't say who it was, but just asked Su Lai and Xiaolishan to go with him to meet him. At the same time, in a maple forest not far from Wolf Mountain, a young man suddenly opened his eyes. Not good. After saying bad words, the young man ignored the followers around him and stood up to run away. However, as soon as he jumped up on his toes, he was pushed back to the seat by a powerful force of pure yang. Your Majesty is here. I have never greeted you. How dare you trouble your Majesty to get up and greet me personally? As Su Tong's message entered the secret, the young man's face flickered, but he no longer resisted. He could only sit on the chair and wait for Su Tong and the others to stride over. Buzzing. Before the three of them could come forward, the surrounding followers were already standing in front of the young man. Su Lai glanced at these followers, and his expression changed instantly. Secret Guard 13 Eagles. Others didn't recognize these people, so how could Su Lai not recognize them? When Emperor Zhao Meng adopted these dead servants, ordinary people didn't know them, but Su Lai knew the details of these people early on. I didn't expect to meet them here. At this time, Su Lai inevitably felt something strange in his heart, and said with a cold face, "Get out of here." The roar of thunder and anger instantly caused everyone to fall to the ground. Then Su Lai strode forward and took a closer look. He saw a young man sitting in the pavilion, squinting his face and looking at him with a smile on his face. His Majesty. Su Lai looked at the young man, and his eyes suddenly revealed a bit of surprise. The young man in front of him looked almost exactly the same as Zhao Meng, but their temperaments were completely different. Although Zhao Meng was the emperor, even though he was personally in charge of the court, he always looked like a friendly minister. The Zhao Meng in front of him exudes a domineering aura from inside to out. The most important thing is that this man's cultivation is on par with his own. In the realm of terrestrial immortals, they are not mortals. Their bodies are like precious jade, endowed with unique innate energy. At this time, Su Lai couldn't help but be shocked and broke into a cold sweat. He never expected that this little emperor, who he had never cared about, would unknowingly have the qualifications to challenge him. This is very scary. The emperor quietly accumulates strength. When advancing, he can pretend to be a pig and eat the tiger. When retreating, he can sit on the sidelines and remain invincible. This is the way to be a king. Humph, Su Qiaozu, you seem to be very surprised when you see me. When things got to this point, Zhao Meng no longer needed to hide. He sat on a chair and stared at Su Lai coldly, and said with a smile on his face, "Why, can everyone in the world come to watch the battle, but I can't? My lord, I don't dare." Su Lai was stunned for a moment, then quickly bowed to say hello. But Su Tong walked over with a smile on his face, changed the unpleasant topic, and bowed slightly towards Zhao Meng. "I pay homage to your majesty, may your majesty be blessed with peace and prosperity." Seeing Yang Hong, Zhao Meng's face was filled with uncertainty, and he wanted to get angry, but when he saw the monstrous fortune behind Yang Hong, which was already too big to fall, a giant holding up the sky, he could only endure the unhappiness in his heart. He forced a smile and said, "Marquis Xinwu is exempt from the courtesy." Zhao Meng accentuated his tone and emphasized the words Xinwu Hao, hoping that Yang Hong would not forget that he was still a minister of Tiangan and that he was the emperor of Tiangan. It's a pity that Su Tong couldn't understand Zhao Meng's painstaking efforts. He straightened up and said bluntly, "The Shangqing Road has brought trouble to the imperial court, disrupted the country, regarded the world's creatures as livestock, and tried to provoke a war between the north and the south, causing chaos in the world. The northern man emperor, I have issued an edict that Shangqing Dao will be regarded as a cult, and I also ask your majesty to issue an edict to destroy the cult and benefit the world." Zhao Meng's mouth twitched, not to mention how disgusted he felt. This was originally a fairy chess game, and he was able to advance and retreat as a spectator, but when the chess game was getting intense, Yang Hong overturned the table, and all the conspiracies were revealed to the broad daylight. How to play this? Zhao Meng lost his temper and lowered his voice. "What Marquis Xinwu said is exaggerated. As far as I know. My lord, please give me your order." Su Tong didn't intend to talk nonsense with Zhao Meng at all, so he spoke again, and at the same time directly transmitted the message into the secret. "Senior brother, you don't want your youngest son who is under 1 year old to ascend the throne and become the emperor in advance." Zhao Meng was startled, facing the threat of Su Tong Chi Qiaoqiao, his eyes suddenly became bloodshot. In a word, he either ordered to stand in line, or he removed the monarch and established a new monarch. With Su Lai by his side, it would not be difficult to overthrow him as the emperor. Good. The word good seemed to be squeezed out from Zhao Meng's teeth with difficulty. His eyes were covered with bloodshot eyes, staring straight at Yang Hong's face, and finally he had no choice but to issue the imperial edict. Su Tong also emphasized that the real person of Zhao Meng should personally issue the edict, and that it should be stamped with a big seal to announce it to the world. This sentence completely blocked all Zhao Meng's escape routes. Finally, he glared at Su Tong fiercely. I really saw the right person. Zhao Meng's words seemed to be accusing Su Tong of being ungrateful, but these words were the same as saying harshly, don't leave if you have the guts, after losing a fight. Whoever takes it seriously is the fool. Zhao Meng hid too deeply. If he was not caught out first, there was no guarantee that he would not side with Shangqing Dao at the critical moment. When the time comes, when you are adding insult to injury, do you still want to hear him say, if you want me to die, I have no choice but to die? Zhao Meng closed his eyes for a moment, and after getting in touch with his body, he coldly snorted, okay. After saying this, Zhao Meng stood up and was about to leave, but Su Tong stepped forward again at this moment. I still want to borrow something from your majesty. What? Zhao Meng suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Su Tong didn't even explain it clearly to him before he directly launched the interception. By the time Zhao Meng noticed it, it was already too late. When the divine dragon opened its mouth and swallowed it, Zhao Meng found that half of his luck had been swallowed up. At this time, Zhao Meng really wanted to kill someone, but no matter whether it was Su Lai, Xiaolishan, or Yang Hong in front of him, he couldn't move. He could only grit his teeth and glare at Yang Hong's face. You call this borrowing? Yang Hong scratched his head and looked at Zhao Meng with blinking eyes. I am a scholar. What is a scholar's thing called borrowing? Su Lai and Xiaolishan almost rolled their eyes when they heard this. But when I think about it, it seems that Yang Hong is really a scholar. Well, at least this shameless level is not a bit higher than Zhou Yasheng. Zhao Meng breathed a sigh of relief in his chest, almost biting his gums to bits, and said, it's an insult to gentlemen. This time he turned around and ran away without looking back, for fear that he would be a step too slow. If Yang Hong called him again, he would suffer. No. The imperial decree cannot be announced to the world until Zhao Meng's true body is delivered from Hongshan to Linen Mansion, which will take a certain amount of time. But Su Tong and the others were not idle. With the personal descriptions of Su Lai and Xiaolishan's victims, the old man from Gasu, who turned into a righteous reporter, exposed the deeds and conspiracies of Shangqing Dao to the world. At this time, everyone in the world criticized Shangqing Dao. Especially those scholars who scolded the most fiercely. After all, Confucianism most rejects the way of ghosts and gods. Now they seize the opportunity to show off their presence. Pieces of articles were sprinkled down like white snow, criticizing the Shangqing Dao cult for harming the country. At the climax of the public denunciation, Zhao Meng's imperial edict was finally announced to the world in Linen City, which was tantamount to completely classifying Shangqing Dao into the scope of a cult. When Su Tong slowly approached the immortal summit with his mighty troops, the great righteousness of the world had already been captured. Wherever he went, people and officials lined the streets to greet him and beat gongs to see each other off. Occupy great righteousness and raise the banner. The louder the celebration, the stronger the voice to kill the cult. At the same time, Su Tong's luck is also like a snowball, getting bigger and bigger. By the time he reaches the foot of Tianmu Mountain, Su Tong has become a world-famous person. The sage in my heart. Even the huge power of faith has surged towards Su Tong like a tide. This scene made Su Lai and Xiaolishan crazy with envy. The two of them were the best in the world. They controlled the government and their reputation was so great. But even so, the people of the world did not say who made them saints, and ordinary people could not pass this test, let alone Confucianism. So much so that the old man from Gasu wrote such a paragraph in his notebook. Why compete with the world to win the title? Thousands of people will point to you, and 10,000 people will win the title. The 7-foot pure yang has not yet emerged from its sheath, and no one in the world dares to climb the mountain.